Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we review the shitty film that is Steel.
Yay!
It came out in 1997, starring Shaquille O'Neal. It's one of the worst superhero movies of all time. But lucky for us, we got a special guest coming on to join us to just tear this movie to shreds. It's his name is John, and he's from the Spoiler Country podcast. He reviewed Man of Steel with us,
right.
One of our earlier episodes. So he's a big DC fan. He's a big Superman fan. And we think he'd be a funny guy to go ahead and just bash this movie with.
Yeah, I've only seen it twice. This was my second time watching it, and it hasn't aged well. I think it was worse the second time I watched this than the first time.
We'll get all into it in the review coming on after we get into the news from the past week regarding Marvel and DC movies and television. Actually, I think it's all television.
Yeah, all
news.
television this week.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about the Howard the Duck, Hitmonkey, M.O.D.O.K, and the Dazzler and Tigra shows that are coming to Hulu.
They're animated.
Right, they're animated shows, and then they're all going to come together in one team-up show called The Offenders. So that's going to be exciting. We'll talk about that. We'll also be talking about the recent cancellation of the Punisher and Jessica Jones Netflix series. It was the last of them that were remaining. We knew it was just going to be a matter of time before all these shows got canceled. So while it is bittersweet, it is not really surprising.
Right.
Also, we'll be giving our first impressions of the Doom Patrol series that just premiered on the DC Universe app.
Right.
Apparently it's amazing.
Yeah.
I watched a few clips, so.
You should just watch the episode. I have to watch all these Netflix shows.
I don't have the DC app, and I never will because I hate DC. So there you go. As always, you can check out the show notes for this episode to go ahead and see the time codes where we talk about each topic, so you can skip ahead if you want to. We want to give a quick special shout out to everyone who rated us and reviewed us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts over this past week.
Yeah, we're up to 77 ratings now, from 73 from the last episode, which, if you remember, we didn't get any new ones from the last episode. So thank you guys so much for stepping up and giving us those ratings.
Jace Crump was one of those. I know that he mentioned that he gave us a rating on iTunes this past week. But we also want to give special shout outs to Babushka Laggards, Pagan Youper, and Taj Majavi for giving us reviews as well on iTunes.
Yeah, Pagan Youper asked us a question in their review about who would be a good matchup for Venom in one of our duel episodes. And luckily for you, we have actually done a duel episode with Venom. It was last October.
Yeah, before the Venom movie came out.
Yeah, we pit Clayface against Venom.
Definitely go check that episode out. I think that was a lot of fun to speculate on who would win in that match.
Yeah, it was a crazy match.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks again to all of you guys who reviewed us and rated us. It means a lot to us. Again, we're trying to get to 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. And once we hit that, we'll have made the requirements to become official critics on Rotten Tomatoes and have our reviews of the Marvel and DC movies count towards their official tomato meter score.
Right.
So that'll be super exciting. Really looking forward to getting to that point. But you guys have to rate us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And I think a few weeks ago, I had mentioned, whenever you get around to it. But then I was like, no, that's a horrible idea because we didn't get any ratings at that point.
Right.
So now I'm just saying as soon as possible so that we can stop bugging you guys about it.
Right. Yeah. I hate bringing it up every week, but,
that's the only way we're going to get the ratings.
Exactly.
So with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. So No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post to social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was, what is a spin-off film for a character in a Marvel or DC film that you would most want to see?
We got a lot of answers on this one. Some great answers, some good answers. Shout out to Hunter Holmgren, who asked for a series based on Batman's Alfred.
No, that's not a film. No. You're asking for a series.
But lucky for you, Hunter, there is a series called Alfred in the works. And it's going to be on the Epix channel, I believe. Yeah. And apparently it's supposed to be pretty hardcore. And yeah, we talked about it a few times on the show. But yeah, you get your wish.
And I think you knew that it was happening.
I think we found the one person who actually asked for that show. Shout out to Ken Johnson for his answer of Dr. Fate. Now, Dr. Fate hasn't shown up in a Marvel or DC film that I know of personally, so I don't know if it could be considered a spin-off film, but you could certainly have it based in the same cinematic universe as the other DC films, for sure.
Yeah, it couldn't be considered a spin-off film for the film library we currently have.
Right.
But who knows, maybe in the future, Dr. Fate will be introduced in another film.
Like Justice League Dark or something like that.
Right. At which point, after that, you could have a spin-off film.
Yeah. Congrats to Joel Seagrave. You get honorable mention for your answer of Gonky, the man in the chair, which is hilarious. I think in Spider-Man Homecoming, his name is Ned, as opposed to Gonky, even though he's based off of the Ultimate Spider-Man character. Right. Unless Joel Seagrave is referring to the Gonky that showed up in the Spider-Verse movie.
Who had no dialogue.
Yeah, he wasn't referred to as the man in the chair.
No.
But either way, that would be hilarious. So congrats to you.
Also, congrats to Jace Crump, who gave the answer the Winter Soldier, presumably, before he's found by Cap and, when he's off doing his secret missions for the Russian government.
No, I think Jace mentioned that this would be a film that takes place after Captain America's death, if that happens in Endgame, when he takes on Cap's mantle, basically.
Well, he is getting his own TV show.
That's true. He is.
This whole episode is about TV. TV everything.
Congrats to Andy Freeman, who gave the answer of Spider-Ham. I absolutely would love to see a spin-off movie with Spider-Ham, because I don't think he got enough screen time in the Spider-Verse movie. What screen time he did have, he was great in, but I'd like to see more of that.
High on Comics also gave the answer Winter Soldier, and they're the ones who said that they wanted to see his adventures prior to Captain America, the Winter Soldier movie.
Yeah, that would be cool, for sure. Congrats to Bodo Winter for giving your answer of Quicksilver.
Specifically the one from the Fox films.
Yeah, the one played by Evan Peters. That would be interesting, I think, because they have definitely done the best job showcasing his speed powers in those Fox films. He's not my favorite Quicksilver. I did prefer Aaron Taylor Johnson's just because I felt he was more true to the comics.
Right.
But Evan Peters certainly has charisma, and I think he could probably lead his own film. And they would be fun to watch, too, with all the different bullet time stuff they have going on.
Oh, yeah. And our final honorable mention goes to Jeremy Orr, who gave the answer Ra's al Ghul. Specifically, his rise to power and early days of the League of Assassins. And yeah, that would be really cool.
That would be pretty cool. I think that would make a better series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But the winners of this week's No Prize, we chose two of them, actually. We each chose one because we felt there were a lot of great answers out there.
Yeah.
My award goes to Carmen Rodriguez, who gave the answer of Nick Fury. And I thought that was a brilliant answer because I've always been wondering what he's been getting up to in between the events of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War, and Avengers Age of Ultron, and the Avengers Infinity War. At the end of Infinity War, he's cruising with Maria Hill, but we don't know what he's up to, and I would love to see what's going on. What is he doing with Maria Hill? Are they banging?
Oh my gosh.
Are they infiltrating governments and doing sexy spy stuff?
Wow.
I want to know. I want to see that movie.
My award goes to Colby Hensches, who gave the answer Deathstroke the Terminator, who, as you may remember, was at the very end in the post-credit scene to Justice League.
Yeah, played by Joe Manganiello.
And I'm just heartbroken that nothing has come from that.
Right.
Deathstroke is such an awesome character, and I would love to see his own film. It would be so badass.
It would be, yeah. Kind of similar to Deadpool, yeah, you think? Kind of a ripoff, maybe?
No, Deadpool's the ripoff of Deathstroke.
Okay, whatever you say, man. Whatever you say, man. But yeah, that does it for the No Prize. If you guys want to win a No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we will be asking another question of the week.
And with that out of the way, on to the news.
All right, so in news that came out of total left field this past week, we learned that Hulu is going to be releasing 4 animated Marvel television shows, including Howard the Duck, Hit Monkey, M.O.D.O.K, and the Dazzler and Tigra show. What's more surprising than these shows is the talent that's been announced behind them.
Exactly.
So Howard the Duck is actually going to be written and produced by Kevin Smith, which we all know who Kevin Smith is. He's a great comedic writer. He's a great movie maker, and he loves comic books and comic book characters. He is a perfect match for a Howard the Duck spinoff show. I'm not sure if he's going to be voiced by Seth Green and if it's going to be the same character that's appeared in the Guardians of the Galaxy films.
Right.
But this is so long overdue. I'm a huge fan of Howard the Duck. As you guys know, if you've been listening to the show for a few months, that we did a Howard the Duck duel episode where we pit him against Detective Chimp. That was around Christmas time.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't know much about Howard the Duck, I would definitely give that episode a listen. I also did a guest spot on the Blast from Our Past podcast a few months ago where they reviewed the Howard the Duck film from the 80s. And yeah, we just ripped it to shreds. But it was a lot of fun to talk about. And the character has so much potential to just be so out there with the stories that you can tell with him.
For sure.
He's so wisecracking. It'll be a really hilarious show, I can tell.
Honestly, if it was just Kevin Smith running this show, I would be happy. But it's not only Kevin Smith, it's also Dave Willis, who's also the creator of shows like Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
It is amazing
it's going
the talent they have.
to be incredible. The synopsis for Howard the Duck was trapped in a world he never made, but America's favorite fighting fowl hopes to return home with the help of his unstoppable gal pal Beverly before the evil Dr. Bong can turn him into the crispiest dish on the menu. It's so awesome. I would have been happy if it was just this news.
Right.
And not only did we get the announcement about Howard the Duck, we also got M.O.D.O.K, which is being showrun by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom. Another hilarious duo. Jordan Bloom is actually one of the minds behind the shows of Community and American Dad, so great talent.
Yeah.
Patton Oswalt, I have to believe he is going to be the one that will be voicing M.O.D.O.K.
Please. I love Patton Oswalt just like screaming and yelling and ranting. I could totally see him doing that for M.O.D.O.K. I could already tell that one's going to be like hilarious.
Yeah. The synopsis for that one says that the show centers around an egomaniacal supervillain with a really big head and really little body who struggles to maintain control of his evil organization, AIM, and his demanding family. These sound great.
Yeah.
Hitmonkey, I'm not too familiar with. If I'm being honest, I don't think I've ever read a comic book with him. I was most surprised by this character being announced, but I looked him up, and he made his first appearance, I believe, in a Deadpool comic. And he's basically just a macaw monkey whose like clan rescued this hitman from dying in the Arctic, and they kind of like learned the hitman ways from him. But he's the sole surviving member of that clan and allegedly one of the greatest assassins in the Marvel universe.
I'm not familiar with the showrunners for this one, Josh Gordon and Will Speck.
I'm not too familiar with Josh Gordon's and Will Speck's work. I think the only thing that I've seen from them has been Blades of Glory and Office Christmas Party, but those were two fairly funny movies. So yeah, if they're working on Hitmonkey, you'd have to imagine that it would be equally as funny.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those, but, I've heard good things for the most part.
Yeah. The next show is called the Tigra and Dazzler Show. We all know Tigra from the West Coast Avengers, and Dazzler she's a mutant character. She's a pop singer who can convert sound into light.
Yeah.
And the synopsis for this story says that it's about two woke superheroes and best friends, Tigra and Dazzler, as they fight for recognition among powered people who make up the 8 million stories in Los Angeles. Now, the minds behind this show are going to be Chelsea Handler, whom I freaking think is the most hilarious female comic out there. Not even just female. She's probably one of the top 5 comics of all time, I think, in my personal favorites. Erica Rivanoja has done work on like South Park,
Last Man on Earth,
yeah,
Grounded for Life. I think she also worked on the film Girls Trip. I didn't see that.
I didn't see that either. But so much great talent working on these shows. Of course, they're all going to come together to create the show called The Offenders, where they team up and fight some common enemy. The Offenders from the comic books were not these guys. The Offenders were like the anti-Defenders team. The Defenders were primarily the Hulk, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, and the Submariner.
Yeah.
And the Offenders team in the comics was composed of Red Hulk, Terex the Tamer, Baron Mordo, and Tiger Shark.
Interesting.
So they're kind of like, with both the Defenders and the Offenders, Marvel TV has kind of like just kind of stripped everything away.
Just reinvented
the comics
teams.
know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Created their own stuff.
I have to say that this approach of like, for most of these shows, of taking like a well-known comedian and teaming them with like an accomplished industry writer is pretty brilliant.
I am so looking forward to every single one of these shows. I hope that they release them all at once and they don't do like the DC Universe model of just releasing one episode a week.
Yeah.
That way we could actually review these as they debut on that platform.
Yeah, now that the Netflix shows are gone, it'll give us more to review.
Right. I'm so looking forward to it.
Did you ever think you would look forward to an animated project from Marvel? Because I didn't.
It's been a while since I've been excited about an animated Marvel project, but this is probably like the best news we're going to get all year, I feel like.
If they're all like Aqua Teen Hunger Force or like Archer, these are just going to be like the best shows you can't watch around your family members.
The Adult Swim type content.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And in regards to animation, we have a question of the week.
In your opinion, what has been the best animated Marvel or DC television show, and why?
The why is the big important part of this question, because there are definitely some frontrunners out there in terms of both Marvel and DC, but we want to see why you guys love the shows that you love so much.
Exactly. So post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media for our next episode.
Yeah, and in less enjoyable news, we received word today that The Punisher and Jessica Jones shows have been canceled at Netflix.
Officially.
Again, no surprise there. But there is somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel because over the past week, we have received some comments from the Hulu execs stating that it could be a possibility that they revive these shows once the contracts over at Netflix have expired and they're able to use these characters again.
Yeah, today Jeff Loeb also put out his reaction to the cancellation of these final Marvel shows.
Yeah.
He strongly hinted in there that we would see these characters again.
Really hope so.
I would have to think, since they're putting so many Marvel shows on Hulu, that they're kind of testing the waters to see what kind of audience they could get for these shows on that platform.
Yeah. Well, I think the Runaway show has had a pretty good following on Hulu on that platform. So you'd have to think that more popular characters would also get a similar response. Jeff Loeb's letter ended with the statement given by Matt Murdock's father in the Daredevil show where he says, "The measure of a man is not how he gets knocked to the mat, it's how he gets back up." And he says, "To be continued." I'm really optimistic that these shows are not dead, and maybe we won't get their individual shows back, but possibly they'll all be starring in maybe some kind of anthology, like a Defenders anthology type thing, where they get cool episodes, or maybe even a team up show with all of them. That sounds a little bit expensive, but it'd be cheaper than producing a bunch of individual shows, even though I would prefer that all the individual shows do come back.
Just to tie up all those loose ends, Iron Fist.
Yes.
Right?
Luke Cage.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to see those guys back. So here's hoping. And I guess the only thing left to say about the Netflix shows is, and I'll take with me the memories.
No.
To see the sunshine after the rain.
No, dude.
It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
I don't know if you hit the last note. I think you failed on that last note. This explains why you were practicing this song earlier.
No, fuck you. We don't do enough singing on the show like we used to. We used to sing all the time on this show.
What? When?
Yeah, when we didn't have transition music to go into the reviews.
Oh, that's right. Moving on. So, the Doom Patrol came out last Friday. Now, if you remember my reaction to Titans Season 1, I said that I liked it, but that I wasn't prepared to recommend that people subscribe to the DC Universe platform just for that show.
Right.
We were introduced to the Doom Patrol cast in an episode of Titans. It's how Beast Boy ended up on the Titans team. Mm-hmm. And that episode was pretty good, but I wouldn't say it had me clamoring for a Doom Patrol series. Mm-hmm. Even with all the critical praise that the first 2 episodes of Doom Patrol received prior to its launch last week, I was still pretty skeptical because the marketing for the show hasn't been great.
No, but it did get a 92% those first 2 episodes.
I think it's 93% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But again, I was really? Based off the footage I had seen, I was surprised, That being said, the pilot episode was really, really good. It was really funny. It was really tragic. There were moments where I definitely teared up. And it was also at the end, really weird, which is exactly what the Doom Patrol should be. And it's still dark like the Titans, but it makes much more sense for these characters.
Right. Yeah.
It still has the same kind of vibes as to what Marvel was doing on Netflix and hopefully Hulu in the future.
Yeah.
The opening credits, I think. Have you seen those?
Yes, I have.
It's it's available online if you haven't seen them.
They're pretty interesting.
They are. It gives a pretty good vibe of what the tone of the show is.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of them, just like I am of the Netflix Marvel opening sequences.
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser is fantastic as Cliff Steele. He's sort of the heart of the team. He was a race car driver who was in a horrible accident.
I saw that clip on YouTube, and there was a part where he was like, "What the fuck?" In his Brendan Fraser voice.
He says "fuck" so many times in the show.
I'm just not used to it.
It's great.
But it's so hilarious to me.
It's hilarious. It's really funny.
I heard that Brendan Fraser has a few sex scenes in the show.
He does.
Is that awkward?
One of them is awkward because you could see his bare ass, and I'm like, oh, I never wanted to see that. But the other one is actually really sad. I don't know if I want to go into details.
I feel like we've seen Brendan Fraser's bare ass before.
Have we?
In George of the Jungle, I want to say, or something.
I haven't seen it.
Oh.
I haven't.
Oh, I just might be making that up then.
I don't know. I don't want to find out. So April Bowlby is also terrific. She plays Elastigirl.
Okay.
Who's like this sort of like pompous yet sympathetic figure.
Now, do they all come from different time periods?
They do.
How? How do they explain the time travel?
Well, it's not time travel.
Okay.
They all just like sort of had their respective accidents in different decades. You know, and then because of those accidents, they kind of don't really age anymore.
Okay.
So, you know, it takes place in current time. There's no time travel involved.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Matt Bomer, he doesn't do the physical acting for Negative Man, but the emotion and complexity he's able to convey through just his voice is like remarkable. The whole cast is great. I'm hesitant to say like too much about the story that's set up in the pilot. It's narrated by Alan Tudyk's Mr. Nobody, and he breaks the fourth wall. Like he knows he's narrating a TV show, and he like inserts quips, something like when he's like, talking about like Rita Farr, Elastigirl, he's like, critics called Rita Farr like the poor man's like Katharine Hepburn, but what do the critics know? They're gonna hate this show. I was cracking up laughing.
It's a good joke.
Yeah. So I mean, you'll have to see it. Like, I'm not sure if you know, like, the showrunner for Doom Patrol is Jeremy Carver, who also does Supernatural.
Okay, yeah.
I've never seen that show, but I know it has a huge fan base.
Yeah, my wife is a huge fan
why.
of Supernatural. She's been watching it since season 1, so she might actually be interested in the Doom Patrol.
And that show is still going on.
Right.
I'm telling you, dude, you can use my subscription.
I don't know.
I have to watch all these Marvel TV shows. You can't watch one DC show.
I have to watch all the DC animated movies.
Oh my gosh. Whatever. So, you know, I watched the Titans with my wife, and she was never really into that show. Like, it was just too dark. I had a hard time convincing her to watch this show with me, but she did. And now, like, the both of us can't wait for the next episode.
They really should make it bingeable, man. They need to release all the episodes at once.
Actually, my wife, Barbara, she was upset. She was like, oh, let's watch the next one. I was like, it doesn't work that way with the DC Universe. She was like, damn it. If anyone else is watching this show, like, I'd love to chat with you guys about it. Just like send us private messages on social media or via email. Like, once the first season is over in the summer, I'll make sure to give my thoughts on that season as a whole. But from what I can see from this first episode, if you're on the fence about getting a DC Universe subscription, you know, which is probably hard to justify because it's just like one show at a time.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, people should definitely check this show out.
Well, with all the news done, let's go ahead and move on to our review of the Steel movie starring Shaquille O'Neal. We'll get John Horsley from the Spoiler Country podcast on the line, and he'll give us his thoughts on the movie as well as tell us about a cool new horror comic project that he has coming out soon.
All right, so Steel was a 1997 film starring basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal, and it was based on a DC Comics character who, for the most part, is a supporting player in the Superman comics. If you want to learn more about the character, you can listen to our previous episode, Steel vs. War Machine. But before we get into our thoughts on the film Steel, I want to bring in John from the Spoiler Country podcast. How's it going, John?
Oh man, it's going pretty good.
Have you been this past year and a half? I think was the last time you were on our show to help us review the Man of Steel movie.
I've been really busy, man, with the podcast and with the book I'm working on, and I've just been really busy.
So we hear that you have a new project, a big project coming out, a new book. Go ahead and tell us about that.
Yeah,
I'm excited for it.
Oh man, it's an anthology that takes place over 1,000 years with one family, where I had a bunch of writers and artists come in and basically tell stories within this world, and they all connect because it's all family related, but there's also an overlying story for the whole book that connects all 10 stories in the book. And it's just been two and a half years of just grinding out this thing every night pretty much. And now it's on Kickstarter. It's doing pretty well on Kickstarter. And I just can't wait for this book to come out. It's been a lot of late nights. I'm up pretty much till 1 o'clock every night working on this book in some way.
You're the illustrator for the whole thing?
No, I illustrated. So I wrote 2 stories in the first book. I colored 2 stories. I inked a story. And the story that I actually drew, we ended up pulling out of the first book because it didn't fit the theme of the first book. I drew the cover for it. I worked as basically the art director, finding all the artists for the book and kind of like putting it all together.
Nice. And where can people find you on Kickstarter? When does the campaign end?
It ends on March 5th, and they can just search for Eins, EYNES, or they can go to einsanthology.com/Kickstarter, and it'll take them right to it.
Nice. Still plenty of time to go ahead and support this awesome project that John has going on. I, for one, will be going there right as soon as we're done recording to go ahead and make a pledge.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
I can't wait to read it. I know you sent me a preview of the book, and it looked phenomenal. So it's really exciting to see someone that I know who's working on like a big trade paperback collection like this.
And if you go to the Kickstarter and if you watch the video, you recognize the words being said because they're 90% the words you sent me.
Awesome. I'll definitely go check that out. Last time you were on the show, you hadn't started Spoiler Country yet, so go ahead and tell us about that new podcast. I guess it's not so new because you guys have been around for about a year now?
About a year and a half, yeah. I started in July of 2017. I think I was on your show like a couple months before that. It's myself and my wife's uncle, Kenrick, who we became very good friends through comics because we both love comic books. And we started a podcast just to talk about comics and movies and pop culture and just kind of rant about things. And it's been going pretty well. I mean, we've gone to San Diego twice now. We go to Emerald City Comic Con, Portland Comic Con. We've had a bunch of great guests on, like Uwe Boll, the director of those awesome films everybody loves. And
is that how you pronounce his name? Uwe Boll?
Yeah.
Okay. I always just called him EU.
Right. Right. Most people do for various reasons, but he's actually a really nice guy to talk with. I mean, he's a very smart dude, but he makes terrible movies. Which, funny side note, when we had him on, his manager sent us an email of things we weren't allowed to say on the episode. Like, we weren't allowed to say anything about his bad movies. We weren't allowed to refer to him as the worst director in the world, which is like his tagline, which is like what everybody calls him online.
Right.
10 things we weren't allowed to talk about at all. It's pretty funny.
Nice. Crazy. Well, he's made some pretty bad movies, but I don't know if he's made any movies quite as bad as Steel. Now, are you a fan of the character of Steel? Do you know a lot about him? I know you're a big fan of Superman.
Yeah, I do like Steel in the comics. I think he's a cool character. I mean, it's kind of a cheesy character, but I do enjoy it because I like the way that they tie him into Superman, which does not happen in this movie, but I like the way they tie him into Superman in the comics at least.
The only tie to Superman in this movie is Shaq's Superman tattoo.
Right.
You know, which he has, of course, because that was his nickname when he was playing basketball.
Yeah.
One of his many nicknames was, Superman.
Yeah.
I often wonder if that's the reason why he even took this gig, was because he was like, oh, they're making like a black Superman movie. I want to be that character.
And there's nothing but to do with Superman.
Right. The director for this film was Kenneth Johnson. And initially, I guess, he didn't want Shaq because he's not an actor.
Right.
I heard he wanted Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes? That would have been awesome. I'm so glad he didn't do it, because then we got Blade a year later.
I think Warner Brothers is actually the one who pushed Shaq on the director because he was cheaper and because of his appeal to kids, who was the target demographic for this film. Because, obviously these silly superhero movies were only for kids.
It was 97, X-Men wasn't out yet. Blade wasn't that big of a thing.
This is the same year that Men in Black came out, and I'm startled by the difference between Men in Black and this film, because this film feels so damn 90s.
Yes.
Like the poor cinematography, the cheesy music, the cheesy dialogue, like the things that they thought they could get away with in the 90s. It's just astronomical.
It's like a bad 90s TV movie.
Yeah, it is. When it came to kids superhero movies, they just didn't take them as seriously.
I feel like this almost like it was a throwback to late 80s kind of cinematography and stuff. Because you look at a film like Spawn. Spawn was released just 2 weeks before this film.
Really?
In
was
theaters, yeah. And say what you want about that film, at least it looked cool.
I liked that movie. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
I was all about Spawn back in the day, man.
Yeah.
That was such a cool film. The CGI doesn't really hold up nowadays, but it's passable. And at the time, I thought it was just so amazing.
At the time, that cape was so cool.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
It was. And that movie, it turned a profit. Steel... It was a complete box office bomb. It only made $1.7 million in theaters.
Oh my God.
It was insane. And it cost I think $16 million to make. So its budget was really cheap, and it's pretty evident throughout the film. I mean, the acting is terrible.
Yeah.
Again, the cinematography was terrible. The music was really bad. The dialogue was bad. It's really hard to find anything good about this film. If I had to say one thing, it's that it does have a heart to it.
It does. It does. It has that that cheesy 90s heart for a movie you get into it. But I mean, it's ultimately the biggest failure of this movie for me, and probably for anybody who thinks anything about Steel, is the fact that it came out in 97. Steel had only been a character for 5 years.
Right.
And they destroyed everything about the character in this movie.
They did.
The only thing similar is it's a black guy in a silver costume. That's the only thing similar. And then he has a hammer, I mean.
Exactly.
He never used the hammer, though.
Right.
I think he used it maybe once as a sledgehammer, but the rest of the time, it was probably too cheap of a prop to actually swing around like that. He used it as his his gun. Since when does Steel have a gun in the comics?
Since
so
never.
Crazy.
I mean, he has a wrist-mounted gun that will fire some stuff off, but I guess it's more kid-friendly to show a hero shooting people with lasers than bashing them in with a sledgehammer. But again, you know, like if you don't use the hammer, it kind of ruins the whole John Henry angle.
Right. Why have a hammer?
Which, you know, is a big part of the character.
It's a huge part of the character in the comics is the whole John Henry ties. And like the whole reason he becomes Steel is all tied to Superman, which is nothing about this movie.
Right, right. I guess the guy who directed the film, you know, again, wrote the film, Kenneth Johnson, I guess he initially didn't want to even do the project because he wasn't interested in making a superhero film.
And that shows.
And that right there should have been like a big red flag for the producers.
Right.
Because if they would have just stuck with the comics, they would have had a much better film.
Right. I think, when did Batman and Robin come out? Was that 97?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
I would rather watch Batman and Robin again than watch this film again.
I don't know about that.
I agree with that completely. Because at least Batman and Robin has some fun elements and some cheesy dialogue that makes you laugh. This movie just...
It had the spectacle, too.
That's true.
Yeah.
But like, I actually tried watching that again recently. It's so fucking long. At least this movie, you know, like has a shorter runtime. Right when it starts to get really bad, it like just kind of ends. You know, it's a pretty simple story. It's not as drawn out as Batman and Robin.
Well, I think they wanted to be done with it too. So they're like, oh, we're done. Stop here.
Exactly.
I actually think like the first third of this movie is its best part. I think once he actually gets into the costume of Steel, the movie just takes a dive bomb. And it was, you know, it was pretty bad already up to that moment. But I think the costume, the whole movie is leading up to that reveal of when he becomes the superhero Steel. And when you first see him in the costume, you can't help but fucking laugh your ass off. It is so bad.
It's so terrible.
Really bad. The helmet and mask, they're just so, I don't know how to describe it other than fugly, you know?
Yeah.
But to be honest, you know, like, I'm not quite sure how his Steel face worked, like, in his early comic appearances either. Like, they explained it later on in the comics, like, it's like a liquid metal.
Yeah.
But early on, like, you didn't know how his face was, like, metal, and it was still able to, like, emote. It just looked like a metal face. I can understand how they had trouble probably adapting that to film, to live action.
And back in the 90s, they had a real hard time with anything superhero, anything comic related to actually lean into the material. They really tried to, let's take some ideas and let's totally change it for Hollywood because people won't accept superheroes, clearly. They won't accept comic material.
Exactly.
So they do this, and it's like, if you would have just accepted what it came from, you would have had a way better story because clearly it worked in this medium. I mean, obviously you have to make changes to go from comics over to movies, but like changing everything, you're just destroying a character, and it's not, you can't just like rip out everything behind the character and expect someone to accept it.
Right.
You make a shit movie, you get shit results.
Exactly. You know what they should have done? Either they should have left off the helmet completely, or they should have just had a static helmet that didn't move with his mouth, you know, and then done the Iron Man route where they kind of like have a camera inside the helmet. Because they did that for fucking Star Kid. Do you remember that movie? with Joseph Mazzello or whatever? The kid from Jurassic Park. Yeah. He got a superhero outfit, and they would show his expressions by putting the camera inside the mask, kind of like how they do for Iron Man. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Iron Man ripped that off. But... They could have totally done that with Shaq in this movie, and it would have been totally better than the shit mask that we got.
But dude, Shaq's a star. You can't hide his face.
He's not a star.
Do you remember back in the 90s? Like, Shaq was everywhere. He was like all over television shows, like selling Pepsi, selling Reebok. He was everywhere.
That's true.
He was like on video games and cereal boxes.
I remember at school trading for his rookie card. Yeah, he was a huge deal. Even the kids who didn't like basketball.
Right, totally. He was everywhere.
That's right. He was rapping too, I think, at the time.
Yep.
Yeah, one of his rap songs is actually featured in this film. Like when he's like working in the steelworks, which like they never like go back to. Like he says he gets a job like in the steel factory, and then like the rest of the film he's like working in a junkyard. I don't know.
That makes no sense. He also had a video game, Shack Attack, which was like a kung fu fighting game.
Shaq Fu. It was called Shaq Fu.
Shaq Fu. There you go. That's what it was. Yeah.
Shack Attack would have been a good name too.
The story for this film, I guess, is based on the initial arc of Steele's solo comic series, but like barely. I had the first issue of that comic.
That's right. I remember that because in that comic, he got into a fight in his grandma's kitchen and he was beating up fools with a frying pan.
Right.
And they totally did that in this movie.
Yeah. But like all the characters besides John Henry Irons were made for the movie. Like even the grandmother had a different name. In the comic, her name is Bess. In the film, it's Odessa. You know? In the comic, John Henry didn't have a brother like Martin. He had nephews and
fucking
nieces.
Ray J.
I know. I was like, Ray J plays Martin.
Right.
I totally forgot that Ray J was in this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, where's Nick Cannon?
Well, let's get into the characters.
Okay.
So, you know, we've talked a lot about Shaq. You know, he's a likable guy, but like the character of John Henry has like zero charisma in this film. Like there's only so far a smile and like a finger boop will get you. You know?
What was up with that? The boop all the time.
Exactly. Like so many times with the fucking boop.
I hated that. Like there was so much sexual chemistry between John Henry and Susan. You could cut it with a knife. It was palpable. They wanted to fuck. You know they wanted to fuck. And all they could do was just like touch each other's fingers. And like I thought at the end when she like stood up in her wheelchair, I thought they were totally gonna make out, but not even that. Like he went in and then he just gave her a hug. No, I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, I did not understand that either. It was like so pure. It was sickening.
Yeah,
like kiss her at least. Kiss her. Come on. Instead of all this, like they were just like touching tips.
Just the tip. It's fine.
just the tip. Just the tip. Just for a second.
Just to see how it feels.
Well, like I said, this is like a TV movie. They have a line they can't cross, right? I mean, this is clearly just like TV cheese.
Yeah,
but since when they can say shit and ass in this movie, but they can't show a guy kissing a girl. I don't know if it had to do with like the interracial aspect, and maybe they just weren't comfortable with that, which is so ridiculous.
Yeah. It was maybe because he was a giant, and she next to him she was super tiny.
That's a problem for like everyone compared to Shaq, though. The guy's a giant, so big.
He's like 7'1".
Yeah,
so just over 7 feet
he's
tall.
so tall.
Yeah. They made him a soldier in this film, which kind of works. You know, it's different from the comics. He worked for like a government military contract firm, but he wasn't an actual soldier. And I guess I could kind of see why they made that change for this film to simplify it.
Yeah, I can see that, but he's more of a scientist that uses his smarts to make the costume after Superman dies. And
absolutely,
like this one, they kind of alluded to him working on the weapons and like helping design and calibrate them, but not really leaning into how he was able to build all this shit, you know?
Right. I think that's sort of a major problem I have with this movie is that I kind of felt like Sparky. She had a ton of charisma, but I don't understand why she was in the film. And she kind of took something away from the character of John Henry and that he needed like another tech genius on his team.
Yeah.
It's like Iron Man getting help from someone else, you know? They don't need it. They are the tech genius.
Yeah. Steel designed his own stuff. That's the way it was supposed to be, at least.
Right. And you already had like a supporting character to help out in Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
Freaking Shaft.
Yeah, Shaft.
Did you get that Shaft reference? He's like, here's a hammer. And he's like, oh yeah, and I molded the shaft. And then they just kind of started him, and I thought it was a dick joke for like half a second. And I was like, oh no, wait. He is Shaft. That's right.
Well, yeah, he was like, I did the ironwork on this. I especially like the shaft. And I was like, that's what she said.
I mean, it's kind of a dick joke and a Shaft joke all in one. It's both.
There you go. Very appropriate. Very appropriate. The villain for this film was Judd Nelson. He played a character named Lieutenant Nathaniel Burke. He played a good asshole.
Yeah, but he was his facial expressions were so like, why the fuck am I in this movie?
True. But I think like next to Annabeth Gish, who played Sparky, like those two were probably the best actors in this film. They were horribly written, but like they made the most of I think what they were given.
Yeah, I mean he's a good actor. Just in this movie, like put some some facial expressions in what you're saying, man. Come on, you're not a robot.
He was very like 90s cartoon villain.
Yes, he was.
It's true. Yeah, he was pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
He turned on everyone. Very, very cliche, I guess.
I mean, it was predictable. The plot was very predictable in this movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Again, a very simple story.
Yeah.
Moving on to Ray J. Like, I'd say most people probably know Ray J from Kim Kardashian's sex tape.
Yep.
You know, not that I've seen it personally, but...
We've all seen that, okay?
Yeah, we've seen it. We've all seen it. We've all been curious.
I mean, if you Google Ray J, it comes up. If you Google Kim Kardashian, it comes up.
That's true. I would never Google them, though. Now, I don't want to say that his character Martin was useless. Like he served as like a surrogate character of sorts for like younger audience members. But they could have gotten like way more relevant with the character, I think, if they made him like less about comic relief and maybe like an older character who got more involved with the gangs. Like there was a character from the Steel comics who was like that, who's named Jamal, and I think we mentioned him in our last episode.
Oh, that's right. He got caught up in gangs and then he got killed, I think.
Yeah.
There was the opportunity for more social relevance with this film, I think, kind of like in the way how Black Panther was.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the very first Marvel or DC superhero movie with a black lead in it.
It was the fourth black superhero film. I think there was like Meteor Man and then Blank Man,
Spawn.
and then Spawn, and then this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of Marvel and DC, yeah, this was the first black starring superhero film.
Out of those four, I think I got to go with Spawn and then maybe Blink Man.
I like Blink Man. That's
Damon Wayans was hilarious in that one.
Yeah, we watched that film like how many times?
As a kid. Yeah.
So many times.
And then Steel will probably go last. Meteor Man was not bad either, I don't think.
same. But I remember enjoying that one. I never enjoyed Steel. Not even the first time I watched it.
Yeah,
Like, honestly, I don't think we even saw this movie in theaters.
No.
Like, I didn't want to, because like I knew who the character was at the time. I had read his comics, but like just from that and seeing like the movie posters and stuff, I'm like, this is not Steel. I don't want to see this.
See, when I first saw the poster or whatever for this movie, I didn't realize it was connected to Steel, the comic book, because the logo looks nothing alike. There's no like trade dressing like really telling you it's a DC film, and just seeing Shaq in the costume on the poster doesn't look
Right.
like Steel from the comics. There's no S on his chest or anything, so I had no idea it was even a DC movie when I first saw it, or first saw the poster for it.
Yeah. And even in like the poster for the films, like he's not wearing his helmet. It's just like Shaq's face.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's because the helmet was so bad and they knew it. Like even like the little chin, like little flaps like wiggle when he's moving really fast, you know? Or if it's just because, you know, they really wanted to sell Shaq's face.
It's probably on the contract saying he has to show his face on the poster. A lot of actors have this thing where their face, even if they have masks on, their face has to be shown for a certain amount of the film or on all the posters and shit like that.
Well, let's get into the highlights for the film. You know, it starts off with John Henry using a high-tech laser weapon to take out a tank. And it was a weapons demonstration for a senator, I guess.
Yeah.
But like the senator ends up dying like right away in another weapons test shortly after when asshole Burke, you know, turns up the intensity level on a sonic cannon too high, and the sound wave like reflects off the building and back onto the test group.
It was so weird because like was Burke flirting with the senator? Was he like trying to impress her or something like that? What was going on there? Because I got some vibes there too.
I don't think he knew what was going on there. I think he was trying to flirt, but trying to also, I don't know. It sounded like he was trying to undermine his whole unit and sell more weapons to the senator who's already going to buy them.
Right.
You know, I mean, she was already on board. He's like, oh, look what I can do. I can blow shit up too. But she was already on board with all the weapons.
Exactly.
I really like Shaq's delivery of Burke, no.
Right. And that scene, how it was like they held way too long on him screaming, lifting it.
Yes.
It's like, all right, Shaq, just give it everything you got this scene. He's like, It's like, no, more intensity. Ah!
And then they just held for way too long. It was uncomfortably long how long they held on that scene. I was like, come on, just shift.
So, you know, that results in the death of the senator and the paralysis of Sparky. Burke is dishonorably discharged, and John Henry decides to leave the military because of what happened to Sparky.
I thought it was hilarious outside of the courtroom when Burke and Shaq were talking shit to each other. And, you know, Shaq is like twice the size of Burke. And like Burke's like, he's trying to be so macho in front of this guy who could just step on him like a fucking bug. I loved that. Yeah, he plays up his like height in a few scenes, like in this film, just to like intimidate other people. Yeah, it's pretty great because, you know, there's no way you're beating Shaq in a fight. You know, Shaq Fu.
Right. He knows Shaq Fu. I mean, it's great. And besides, he can just slap you away because he's got hands as big as your body.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, since when can you in the military just like leave?
That's right.
You can't just leave.
Well, he said he was done with his tour. Oh, was he? I guess, yeah, he was just sticking around.
Right. But it just happened to be done when he was done after the court case, you know? I mean...
After he's done testifying.
Right. You know, it's like, this timing is very convenient.
It's like, I quit. I could just quit the military.
Yeah.
I don't think it works that way. So John Henry returns home to Los Angeles, and we meet his younger brother Martin and his grandma Odessa. And he learns that the secret military weapons he and Sparky made in the military are in the street gang's hands.
Quick question about Odessa and I guess cooking in general. Does it need to be quiet when you're baking a creme brulee?
I looked into this. Apparently vibrations will make it like crumble.
Really?
But like not to that extent that she was acting that way.
Yeah, no, it's a lot louder. The same thing happens if you're making like a souffle or something like that, or a big fluffy quiche. If you're really loud, it will make it crumble, but it's got to be loud. It can't be like people just talking. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. This whole movie is a lie.
It is. This whole thing's a lie.
But like this whole like setup, if you substitute Los Angeles for Washington D.C., this story element is like straight from Steel #1, like him coming home.
Yeah, I wonder why they chose L.A. as opposed to Washington, D.C.
I wonder if it was because of the Lakers. Because I know, like, as they were filming this movie, he was still, like, having to show up to practices and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So they had to film, like, a lot of his scenes, like, all at once, and then everyone else's.
Was Shaq with the Lakers at this point? I thought he was still with the Magic.
I think he was moving to the Lakers, like, that year.
Gotcha.
I could be wrong.
I don't know. But
I like sports.
We digress. Back to the shitty movie.
So the weapons are on the street because Burke partnered with a crooked arcade machine developer. And they gave it to street gangs to showcase their abilities.
with the best haircut ever, right?
The long hair.
It's a weird actor.
Like, could you look more cheesy 90s? I mean, come on, man.
Something about that whole element of the story reminded me a lot of the Ninja Turtles movie, where they were like incorporating a lot of young kid elements to handle their dirty work.
Yeah, it was like the Foot.
Yeah, those gangster kids, like the kid with the eye patch, he was pretty much like a foot soldier.
Yeah. And that gang, like John Henry runs into them, while they rob a bank. And apparently they steal $500 million from this bank. Which is like, why even sell guns when you're making that kind of money? Just rob banks,
Yeah. And in 97, $500 million was a lot of money back then.
Exactly.
So like now,
exactly.
I mean, what a set for life.
Do banks even hold that much cash inside of them?
I have no idea.
I don't think so. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I mean, they must have stolen like nothing but $1,000 bills
Or $100,000
Like there were no
bills.
5s, no 10s, no 20s, just thousands.
Right.
Yeah, $500 million in cash would have filled up that entire armored car.
For sure. But I guess like near the end of the film, Burke does say like it's not about the money, but it's about power, which I'm like, that's just dumb.
No, it's always about the money and the power.
Right.
It's both. You can't have power without money to back it up, really.
Right.
Especially in a criminal org like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess the filmmakers apparently consulted with kids in South Central LA to make sure that the dialogue for this film was like street enough. But they apparently didn't also consult with them on the wardrobe because some of the thugs in this gang were wearing the most ridiculous things. Like in the pool hall, like there was like a shirtless suspenders with like leather vests and like eye patches. And it was just like weird. It was like not a good look.
Wait, so they'll consult with kids for dialogue for street kids, but not consult with comic book writers to make sure that it's actually accurate to anything in the comic book. Got it.
Right, exactly. It makes perfect sense when you're making a comic book film.
Right.
So, like, we've talked about Shaq's acting ability before. He can't really act, but I think the one thing he does pull off pretty convincingly is anger. Again, he's pretty intimidating when he's bending over people with like his finger wagging in the other person's face and just like talking through his teeth.
Well, his finger's as big as their head. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. So John Henry pulls Sparky out of the hospital right after this to help him design like new weapons to protect the streets. And this scene was kind of weird. Like when he's trying to convince her to come with him, the actress who plays Sparky, she's just like staring at the window. She's like not even looking at him. And I'm like, is she blind?
I thought she was blind for a second.
Yeah. But like she snaps out of it when like he pushes the entire window frame out from the building. It's like, oh, she snaps out of her blindness.
It's like, you're going to have to pay for that, dude.
Exactly.
yeah. That's not cheap.
No,
man.
there's a lot of like moments, like when he was lifting the wall, when he's like pushing the window out of the building, just like display his strength. Like he's definitely has like this superhuman strength. I don't want to say it's subtle, but they don't really like take note of it. It's just assumed he's that strong because he's that big.
Right. I mean, just being that big, you look like you're super strong. I mean,
Yeah.
So like he's big and he's intimidating and he's strong, but he cannot really run that well. I noticed.
You can see that on the court when he's playing.
He's like,
he just lumbers.
He's just too lumbery. It always looks like he's about to fall forward onto his face.
yeah.
He's pretty slow.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why he was a center.
Exactly. So they go to Uncle Joe's junkyard after this, and we meet Uncle Joe, who came across as like kind of sketchy to me. Like you seeing this. This is only like the second time I've seen this. But like, when he was like, you'd be amazed at what falls off the back of a truck. It's like, was he implying that they were like using stolen goods? Like they knew they were using stolen goods?
I mean, yes.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that,
actually. I was surprised how late they introduced this character. It's like they didn't introduce him like when he was like meeting everyone else when he first came back to LA. You thought they would have, or like when he was working like at the steel plant, which again they never came back to. I don't know. So they build the Steel suit and a headquarters, and they take it on a field test. And Steel stops a purse snatcher. Now, when he's taking on the purse snatcher, he has like this wrist-mounted gun that fires steel spikes.
And that's from the comics.
Yeah, and he uses it to pin like the purse snatcher's shirt to a pole. But we never saw it used in the movie again, except to like fire grappling hooks, which isn't from the comics.
I don't know how I feel about the grappling hooks. Like I so much would have rather have seen jet boots.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, me too.
It was all a budget thing. What powers from the comics did he actually have in this movie? So he had the steel spikes. He could fire from the wrist gun.
Right.
He had the magnetism.
Yeah, the magnets, that's from the comics. Though in the comics, it's used more to like guide his hammer than it is to like disarm surrounding gunmen. But I actually like how they did that. I thought that was pretty cool.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I remember in the comics, I saw him use the magnet in his hammer once to help slow down a falling jet, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. He picked up like shrapnel with it. Yeah, so like the disarming scene happened right after the purse snatcher scene. And like this movie...
Wait. About the purse snatcher scene.
Yeah.
What made the people making this film think it was okay to end that beat with him riding up an escalator saying, y'all be chill now? That was the worst exit in all of superhero movies. Nothing will ever beat that. It was so bad.
Y'all be chill now.
Well, they're like, fuck, we can't make him fly away. Just put him on an escalator.
I mean, they could have made him fly away if they gave him the boots, but no.
So I guess this movie was shot on location in South Central LA. And I guess during production, they were targeted by an actual gang who like shot up their crane lights and like their helicopter.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe they wanted a job in the film. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
use us.
They're like,
We're real gang.
You guys are using gangs. We're real gang members. This is our audition.
Yeah.
How dare you make him dress like that in the movie?
We don't want eye patches. Come on.
Exactly, yeah. So right when he like disarms all the gangs, like the police show up and Steele escapes via the rooftops and a motorcycle. And at one point, like Steele leaps across a rooftop to escape the police. Now from the initial shot, you can clearly see there's no way he made it across that jump between those buildings.
He dropped like a rock.
Exactly.
A steel rock.
There you go.
But with like, they covered it up or tried to cover it up with like some shoddy editing. And to me, that's probably like my most cringeworthy moment of this film. It's like you could clearly see there's no way Shaq makes that jump.
Wait. That's more cringeworthy than the grenade free throw?
Oh, I don't know.
We'll get into that.
I mean, we'll get there, but I'm just saying, if we're going cringeworthy.
That tops it. That one, I actually had to pause the movie. I called Melissa down from upstairs. I was like, you got to watch this grenade scene. And she was like, 0 stars. And then she went back upstairs.
But they did set that up.
You can do it.
They set that up like throughout the film. Like, making jokes
Right.
about how horrible he is at free throws. So, I don't know.
Stupid.
I guess Shaq did his own stunts in this film because filmmakers couldn't find like a 7-foot tall stuntman.
Right.
So
Well,
like
I mean-
anytime you see him like being lifted by a crane or like jumping across buildings or even riding his motorcycle, it's all Shaq.
That's pretty commendable, actually.
Did they try getting 2 stuntmen on shoulders?
With a long trench coat.
Right.
And
There
a
you go.
fedora.
Yeah.
No, I could tell it was Shaq when he was chasing the kid through the rail yard when the trains were going. I thought some of those stunts were pretty impressive.
So Steele escapes the police, and then the next night, I guess the gang tries to rob the Federal Reserve, but Steele shows up to stop them. And they have all the same weapons and armor, so like he's not quite successful. They get away, and Steele has to flee the cops again in his motorcycle. It's like he can't do that back to back.
It was the same exact action scene.
Basically,
The same beats and everything.
if they didn't have like a moment with Sparky in between those scenes, it could have all just been like one long field test and, heist stopping scene. So the crime lords see the footage of this attack on the Federal Reserve and are like, I want some of those weapons. I want those. And that's like
right.
Nazis and like the cartel and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's definitely stakes here, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. I love how all the crime lords were watching the nightly news at the exact same time.
Yeah, it was all like tuned to the same channel,
Exactly,
like,
'cause, like,
everywhere across the country.
This was before the days of like streaming video on the internet where that would actually make a whole lot more sense. In this case, they were all just watching, I don't know, frickin' Dateline or something.
Right.
A good crime boss is an educated crime boss.
Right. He keeps up to date with the current events. So Burke sets up John Henry with the police, and he's captured in his home, in his grandma's home, and arrested and put in jail.
And then we're getting into the point into this movie where it's like, just fucking get over with.
Yeah.
Like-
just end it.
End it now. Like, I don't care about any of this anymore. I'm looking at my phone.
Right. I've zoned out 10 minutes ago.
Right. So Uncle John and Sparky get John Henry out of jail by getting their hands on the district attorney's signature and capturing his voice.
Oh, yeah.
Burke kidnaps Sparky and holds a meeting with the crime lords where Steele gets captured because he had just gotten out of jail and suited up. Burke turns against his arcade partner and the street gang, which isn't smart. Like, if you're a bad guy and you're just, like, turning against everyone, how do you expect any loyalty there?
Yeah, no one's going to trust you.
Yeah, but did anybody believe he was going to be loyal to anybody in this movie, that character, Burke? I mean...
No, he was a shithead. He, like, shot his arcade game partner and everything like that, but he still didn't just shoot Steele when he could have. Like, Steele was disarmed and everything like that. He could have taken him out so easily. And yet he was like, you just wait there.
Well, he was armored.
Well, his face is not armored, though.
It's true.
Right.
It's true.
And I hate how Steele kind of got the upper hand by being like, my hammer is way more powerful than your weapons. Here, turn this lever.
Yeah, the one guy was like, I have like a weapon that's like 5 times more powerful. Then Steele's like, oh, just that much? Really? Let's measure dicks.
Thunk.
Shaq's is bigger.
Just by sheer size, I mean.
We're talking about this, yeah.
So Steele tricks Burke into activating his suit's electromagnet, which like gives him back his hammer. Sparky clears the room with weapons she attached to her wheelchair, which is pretty cheesy. Yeah. And then how like she escapes too. She's like, "Is this fast enough for you?" And activates some like jet stream on her wheelchair. And it's like, I don't know if that's that fast.
I don't know if that building's wheelchair accessible now that it's been kind of blown to shit.
Exactly.
Maybe we should be careful with that.
Yeah. So Burke pulls Martin like out of nowhere and uses him as a hostage. Steele and Martin get trapped in like this burning room with the grenade, and Czech finally makes the free throw when he throws it out of the tiny hole.
The longest lasting fuse.
Right. When I first watched this movie back like on VHS tape, when I very first watched it, I actually rewound that scene like 3 times to rewatch it because of how bad it was. So I'm just laughing so hard.
And I love how like the grenade kind of like bounces around that hole and like Shaq's like freaking out, and then it finally falls out, and then it goes off.
Right.
Like the bad guy's like, no! And then it goes off when like he didn't have a chance to like freaking throw it away.
I think that scene is the highlight of the movie, though, honestly.
If I had to show one scene to anybody who hasn't seen this movie, it would be that one.
Absolutely.
Like, if you, the listener, have not seen this movie, go ahead and YouTube Steele, Shaq, Grenade, and then just watch that. And that's everything that you ever need to see.
Yeah, that's all you need to watch, and you'll know everything about it.
So right after this, Burke dies the same way he almost died at the beginning of the film, with like a sonic pulse reflecting back at him. So apparently he doesn't learn his lesson.
Of course not.
Everyone escapes, and the military shows up and it captures like the straggling crime lords. The film ends with the grand opening of Grandma Odessa's Black and Blue restaurant, which she's running out of her house. And it's like, didn't your house just get trashed by the police?
Oh, that was her house?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
And it's
even...
like,
She has insurance.
True.
Yeah, she's responsible.
And then it's over.
So that's pretty much the end of the movie.
So there's no indication, like, once they're all sitting around the table, you know, like, at the end of the film, as to whether John Henry and his team will continue their work to protect the streets. I mean, the gang ran away from the final gunfight with their guns. Like, they left that unresolved.
They were probably setting up a sequel, huh?
Well, like, Shaq has said in interviews, like, in recent years, that he'd love to do a Steel 2. Or, like, a reboot. Personally, like, I honestly wouldn't mind seeing the character on the screen again. But maybe as, like a side character in a Superman movie rather than his own film. And then maybe you could do, like, a spin-off film of him protecting his hometown on the streets.
I think they should do a Man of Steel 2 movie and introduce the character of Steel in that.
That'd be really cool. I would love to see Steel go up against characters like Metallo or Cyborg, Superman or something like that, you know? I don't think you could, like, almost ever do Superman's death on screen again. So you probably couldn't have the character of John Henry emerge as some kind of Superman replacement. He almost needs to be like a laboratory like helper who, you know, just decides to help Superman. Maybe he's responsible for creating like Metallo or something.
Yeah, they could still do him without the death of and just have him be like he does it because he's inspired by Superman or something like that.
Right.
It wouldn't have the same impact, but they could still bring that character in. And I would love to see Steel. Did you guys watch the cartoon Reign of Superman recently?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we reviewed it.
Way to listen to our podcast, you dick.
I don't pay attention to anybody's podcast right now. I'm sorry. I've been working on the book. I've listened to no podcast in like 6 months, but anybody's, not even my own.
That's fair.
But I've heard that a lot from a lot of my friends who podcast. Like, hey, did you hear my episode? I'm like, dude, I have listened to shit recently. I've listened to nothing, not even my own. Our podcast, I just record it and then I give it. We edit it and put it up. I never like touch it again. So I'm like, and done and back to the book.
I mean, in the New 52, Steel wasn't a replacement Superman. He helped Superman because he created Metallo. So he knew how to like deactivate Metallo.
That's
So
right.
that could totally work.
Oh, yeah, and you could totally have Metallo be the Man of Steel 2 bad guy, because we
Right.
haven't seen him in live action yet.
Right. That's what I was saying earlier. Yeah.
But yeah, back to Steel. I think that's everything that we have to say about the movie. Do you have any final thoughts on it?
This film does have a heart to it. You know, it was made for kids. I think kids would probably appreciate it more than we do or would. I feel like I was like the target demographic when this film came out. Yeah, I was like 11. I just didn't care enough to see it. But I feel like if I did, I wouldn't hate it as much as I do right now.
I think it's an earnest failure, but a failure nonetheless. It was bad on every single fucking level, and it couldn't even deliver on spectacle. That's why I prefer to watch a film like Batman and Robin or Spawn or something like that, which are also not great films. Actually, Spawn is fine, but I'd rather see those films over Steel any day of the week, just because it couldn't deliver on any single level. That's the best you could say about it.
My opinion of this movie is like the only person who wanted to make this movie was Shaq, and it showed. Like,
Yeah.
clearly the writer and director didn't really care about this movie, and the rest of the cast kind of, most of them, a lot of their scenes were just phoned in. And look, the only one who actually wanted this movie was Shaq.
That's probably true.
Yeah, but the heart of the movie is him. So I mean, I like Shaq personally, and this movie is just terrible. But it's fun to see him do something like this, because he's so like this spectacle giant. But there's not really anything in this movie to like enjoy,
Yeah. It ended his career. Like he hasn't starred in any other films since Steel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Because like Kazam and like Blue Chips came out before this.
So I'd give Steel, I think if I had to give it a rating, I would probably actually give it 1 star, considering that we gave X-Men Origins Wolverine 1.5 stars. I think I would prefer X-Men Origins just because even though it got just as much wrong with the characters, especially Deadpool, it at least had some visual interest for me.
And it was a touch more faithful to the comics.
Just a hair, yeah.
So I would agree. I would give the Steel 1 star as well.
What about you, John?
Yeah, 1 star easily. I mean, no more. And I think 1 star is being generous, but I don't know. It's not the worst superhero movie out there, but it's definitely a contender for it.
What is the worst superhero movie out there if it's not this?
Probably Catwoman.
Catwoman is definitely worse.
I can't wait to review that one. That one's going to be great.
That's going to be a garbage fire right there.
That's one of all of our subscribers just are like, nope, unsubscribe.
Real quick, what's funny about that movie is my daughters love that movie. They have watched Catwoman on Netflix when it was on Netflix like so many times. Where I'm like, why are you watching this garbage? Just something. I mean, even Elektra's better than this.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
No, I feel like I try and protect my daughter from Catwoman. If I ever like catch her like watching it over and over again, I feel like a failure. Like I failed her.
Great. So now you think I'm a failure as a father. Thanks. Appreciate that.
I was just about to say that.
I was like, what are you saying?
Way to insult your guest on your show. God. Now you know why I haven't listened in a while.
Way to go, Jonathan. Yeah. And on that note, we'll have to build John back up again by promoting his podcast. Definitely go check out the Spoiler Country podcast. They talk about so many cool topics in the realm of comics and movies and just pop culture in general. They back a lot of up and coming comic book creators and are now creating their own comic book themselves. Well,
Yeah.
I guess you are. I don't know what Kenrick's involvement is in that.
He wrote a story for it and he helps me promote it, but he's involved in it. Yeah.
Gotcha. So definitely go ahead and check out the show notes of this episode, and we'll go ahead and link you guys to the Kickstarter that Spoiler Country and John has going on for the Ainz Anthology series that they're going to be releasing. It's going to be a great read with a lot of great minds involved on the project. So definitely check that out.
Yes, please do.
Where can people follow you, John?
Oh, so on social media, if you just search for Y2CL, you'll find me on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. If you want to follow that book specifically, just search for Ainz Anthology, EYNES. And then if you want to find the podcast that I'm on, Spoiler Country, you just look for on Twitter, spoiler_country, or just scpod.net is where we have everything listed at.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on our show, John, and we'll definitely have to have you back on. Give Kaylee our best.
I will. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, yeah. Great to have that guy on. Definitely go check out the Spoiler Country podcast and the Kickstarter for his Ainz Anthology horror comic. And that does it for this episode.
Yeah, in our next episode, we're going to be doing another duel episode. We're pitting Elastigirl versus Miss Marvel. We're sort of stepping away from the Reign of the Superman episodes and leading up to Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a great match. Yeah, Elastigirl is really big now that she's on the Doom Patrol show, and Ms. Marvel has been big for a while now. Kamala Khan, who has stretchy powers as well. They're called embiggening powers. But we'll get all into that in our next episode, where you can learn all about these characters and hear us speculate on who we think would win in a fight, as well as who actually would win.
Yeah, make sure to visit dynamicduel.com if you want to follow us on social media. You can find links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Instagram's the place to be, y'all.
It's my favorite, honestly.
Yeah.
We're also trying something new, minds.com. If you're sick of Facebook, if you're sick of Twitter, we're trying out Minds. I'm posting all the news and stuff that we usually post to Facebook and Twitter there as well. We have a few followers. If we get more, we'll probably stay there. We'll see.
Yeah. Also on dynamicduel.com, you'll find a link to our merchandise store where we sell awesome things like stickers and t-shirts and pillows and a bunch of cool Marvel and DC stuff of our own design. Definitely check that out if you want some cool swag. Also, don't forget to rate us and review us on the iTunes and Apple podcast platforms. And if this is your first time listening to us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and share us with your friends.
I think that does it for this episode. Up and away.
True believers.